This is Mrs. Cahill with 9.3 two-way tables. We're on page 690, and let's go and construct two-way tables. So what is it? Well, it shows data from one sample group as it relates to two different categories. And here's what we mean. Our two categories this time are playing sports or not, and the other one is being on the honor roll or not. According to this, our sample group has 440 people in total. So let's talk about those 440 people that play a sport. 295 of them do play a sport and 45 don't play a sport. Now, of my 295 that do play a sport, 250 are also on the honor roll and 45 are not on the honor roll. Of my 45 who don't play a sport, I have to say that part over. Of my 145 students who do not play a sport, 115 are on the honor roll and 30 are not. We can also look at this data as it relates to being on the honor roll. So of my 440 students in total, 365 are on the honor roll and 75 are not. Now let's look at my 365 that are on the honor roll. 250 play a sport and 115 don't play a sport, and these numbers will add up to 365. Now let's talk about my kids who are not on the honor roll. 45 play a sport and 30 don't play a sport, and in total they add up to 75. Okay, let's go construct one. Felipe surveyed students at his school. He found that 78 students owned a cell phone and 57 of those students owned an MP3 player. There are 13 students that do not own a cell phone but own an MP3 player and 9 students that do not own either device. That is a lot of information and it's hard to put together until we construct a two-way table that summarizes it. We'll organize our information. So let's create our two-way table. Our two categories are owning an MP3 player or not and having a cell phone or not. Let's plug in some of the numbers they've given us. First of all, they tell us that there are 78 students that own a cell phone. Owning a cell phone, we know nothing about the MP3 player, so guess what? That 78 is my total cell phone owners. Now watch out for the next part. And 57 of those students, so we're talking about 57 of these 78 that own an MP3 player, that's going in here. All right, there are 13 students that do not own a cell phone, but that do own an MP3 player. So not owning a cell phone, somewhere in here, but do own an MP3 player, well, that puts me right in here. 9 do not own either device. So where are we at not owning anything? Well, here's no cell phone. Here's no MP3 player. That would hit right there. And that's all the information they're going to give us. And we can fill in the rest based on that information by adding and subtracting. So let's look at this row right here. Apparently the total in this row is 78. So 57 plus some number equals 78, and that number would be 21. 13 plus 9 gives me a total of 22. And now we can add the other way. We can add down. 13 plus 57, that adds up to 70. And 21 plus 9, that adds up to 30. What's my grand total? Well, 30 plus 70 equals 100. But it also works this way too. 78 plus 22 also equals 100. All right, let's see if you've got it. Pause this video and plug in these numbers. Right, we've got 150 children at summer camp and 71 signed up for swimming. There are a total of 62 children that signed up for canoeing and 28 of them also signed up for swimming. And it's a good thing we're constructing a two-way table to summarize the data because it's hard to keep track of it all. So what do we have? Our two categories, canoeing and swimming. Of course, you can canoe or not canoe, and you can swim or not swim. 150 people at summer camp. And we don't know what they're doing. That's our grand total. That's everybody. And that goes right there. 71 signed up for swimming. Do we know anything about their canoeing? Nope. It's just their swimming. That's all of my swimmers. It goes in for my total swimming. There were a total of 62 children that signed up for canoeing. So my total canoers are 62. And that's going to go right there, total canoers. And 28 of them signed up for swimming. So here's a keyword, of them, 28 of them. And we were just talking about canoers. 28 of these guys also signed up for swimming. That's going to put me right there. Okay, that's all the information they're going to give us, but we can fill in the rest by adding and subtracting. If you were using me to get these numbers, that's great, but let's go see if you can pause the video again to get the rest. And we're just going to add and subtract. Okay, hopefully you tried on your own. Let's compare. 28 plus some number equals 71, and that would be 43. We can also add up this way. 71 plus some number is going to equal 150, and if I subtract, I'll get 79. Now what can we do? Oh, I'm going to make a clean spot here. I can add up this way. 28 plus some number equals 62, and that would be 34. And I can add up this way. 62 plus some number equals 150. That would be 88. And one last way to add up. 43 plus some number equals 88, and that missing number would be 45. All right, we can interpret relative frequencies from two-way tables by rows and by columns. It's important to remember that rows go across and columns go down. Because you can think of columns in buildings. You know what those look like, right? Columns go down. Okay, we're going to find and interpret a relative frequency of students in the survey from example 1 by row. And remember, rows, backwards. Rows don't go down, columns go down, rows go across. Okay. So to find the relative frequency by row, we're going to write the ratio of each value of the total in that row and round to the nearest 100th. So in this row right here, 78 is my total. And it's going to be my denominator in those numbers in that row. So 78 is my total. By the way, 78 out of 78, that's everything. That's one whole. Now let's go to here. Let's look at this row. My total in this row was 78. So my 78 is going to be the denominator, 57 over 78. When I turn that into a decimal, I get 0.73, also known as 73%. Now let's do the 21. 21 over 78 as a decimal is 0.27. So now let's look at no cell phone. Our total in that row is 22, excuse me, and 22 out of 22 is one whole. That makes sense. Now let's go take the 13. 13 over my denominator of 22. When I turn that into a decimal, I get 0.59. And for the next section, 9, put that over 22, and that decimal is 0.41. So let's talk about what those numbers mean. So I've got a 73. And remember, my denominator was this. So what are we talking about? Well, we've got cell phone users that also own MP3 players. So it looks like most of my cell phone owners also own MP3 players. Let's look at the next section. Let's look at that 0.59. What does that mean? Well, my denominator was the 22, so that means of my non-cell phone owners, over half also own an MP3 player. Let's go see if you've got it. This was tricky. I could understand if you're not going to pause the video and do this one with me. We're going to find and interpret the relative frequencies of students surveyed by column and round to the nearest hundredth. And remember, columns, like in buildings, columns go down. Okay, so here's our total in this column. That's going to be our denominator. And we're going to use that denominator everywhere in this column. And see this 30? That's our total in this column. And it's going to be the denominator in each cell of that column. Okay, so there's our 70 and our 30, our denominators for both. Well, 70 out of 70 is 100%. Let's go put the 57 over 70. Turn that into a decimal. It's 0.81. Put the 13 over 70. Turn that into a decimal. It's 0.19. Now we change our denominator. We're using the 30. By the way, 30 out of 30, of course, is one whole. 21 out of 30 as a decimal is about 0.7. And 9 over 30 as a decimal is 0.3. Okay, that's it. It might be a bit complicated. Highly recommend you watch the video again before you attempt your classwork.